The provisional electoral list currently available comprises a total of 8,761,348 voters.
Ghana considers tightening regulations around transit goods following latest opioid bust. And is it a case of silence or survival for women threatened with sexual violence in IDP camps in Maiduguri?
The
Bulama, the village leader, earlier claimed there is no molestation of women in this camp. But I can tell you categorically that this is a lie.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is a more edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. Let's begin this bulletin in Niger, where it is now official that it has left the International Organization of La Francophonie, OIF. This was contained in a diplomatic note from the government and comes on the back of Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso exiting from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, in January 2025. Christopher Tisho completes the story.
Niger's decision to withdraw from the International Organization of La Francophonie, OIF, is a continuation of the policy of rupture initiated by the authorities in Niamey with Western institutions since the coup d'etat of July 2023. This was contained in a diplomatic note signed by the Secretary General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Lawali Labo, on Monday. The statement indicated that the withdrawal was made via a verbal note on March 7. Niger's National Committee for the Safeguarding of the Homeland, CNSP, led by General Abdurrahman Ichiani, has, since it came to power, taken numerous measures to redefine its foreign policy. In August 2023, Nigerian authorities denounced several military cooperation agreements with France, and then, in March 2024, they terminated a military agreement with the United States, leading to the withdrawal of American forces from the Agadez base. This decision is part of a broader dynamic of alignment with Sahelian partners and confirms the desire of the Nigerian authorities to distance themselves from institutions perceived as being under Western influence and to favor new partnerships, notably with Russia. It will be recalled that in January 2024, Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso announced their departure from the ECOWAS following its creation of the Alliance of the Sahel State AES in September 2023.
Christopher Tisho filed that report. Amnesty International has warned of the human rights situation in Niger since the junta seized power in July 2023. In a report published on Tuesday, Marcio Sivede, Amnesty Interim Regional Director for West and Central Africa, noted that human rights have been trampled underfoot in law and in practice. Those detained, including former President Mohamed Bazoum, his wife, 7 former ministers, journalists and human rights defenders. The organization reports arbitrary detentions. Recalls since the coup, political parties have also been suspended, and the press house, which brings together 32 media organizations, was dissolved in January 2024. Several journalists have been arrested and international media outlets have been banned. Amnesty International urges the junta to immediately release Mohamed Bazoum, his wife, and all those detained for peacefully exercising their rights. The organization said it submitted its findings to the Nigerian authorities on February 13, but has received no response to date. Now, the Malian army has stepped up its operations against terrorist groups in the north of the country. An airstrike on March 16, 2025 targeted a transit camp in the Timbuktu region, neutralizing several fighters and destroying vehicles used by these groups. According to the army, this offensive is part of a strategy of increased surveillance and targeted strikes against active terrorist bases. Now let's go to Côte d'Ivoire, where the display of the provisional electoral list commenced on Monday across the country. To this end, the Independent Electoral Commission, CEI, organized an informational meeting on the day for political parties and civil society organizations regarding the electoral dispute process, which will begin on March 22 and concluded on April 20, 2025. This meeting also allows the CEI to distribute the provisional electoral list on USB drives to political parties and the CSOs. The president of the CEI, Coulibaly Kubet, disclosed that after processing the data from the recent 2024 electoral process, the provisional list includes a total of nearly 9 million voters. It is important to note that the CI has announced that the final electoral list will be available by June 20, 2025. Well, Alban Ade has more on this report and voiced by Gosin Koli.
Addressing political parties and civil society organizations, the president of the Independent Electoral Commission emphasized the importance of the display phase, which marks the beginning of the electoral dispute process. Coulibaly Cuban urged them to fully engage in this phase of the electoral process and encouraged the public to review the provisional list.
La liste électorale provisoire aujourd'hui disponible compte au total 8 millions.
The provisional electoral list currently available comprises a total of 8,761,348 voters. The publication or posting that we are undertaking initiates this period of public scrutiny, which allows for the challenging of registrations, requests for corrections, material errors, irregularities, or the inclusion of voters who may have been wrongly removed or omitted from the list.
Often accused of bias by opposition political parties, the president of the electoral body reassured the public of the impartiality of the Independent Electoral Commission. Coulibaly Cuban says,
We are not aligned with any political party. We are not adversaries of political parties. We are not for anyone, nor are we against anyone. We operate solely in the interest of upholding the law. Place your trust in the Independent Electoral Commission.
Regarding the opposition's request for the commission to reopen voter registration, the president of the institution declared that their schedule does not allow time for a new electoral revision before the 2025 election. It is noteworthy that former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo, the PPACR candidate for the upcoming presidential election, as well as Charles Blegude and Guillaume Soro, who have been convicted by Ivorian courts, are not included in the provisional electoral list.
Albert Ade in Abidjan sent in that report and voiced by Augustin Colley.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In neighboring Ghana, the Attorney General, Dr. Dominic Ayine, has dropped treason felony charges against activists and a lawyer, Olivier Baka-Vomawo, bringing an end to a legal battle that has spanned over 2 years. Nole Pesquin, a formal declaration to discontinue prosecution, was filed on March 12, 2025, effectively clearing the way for the discharge of the lawyer. Baka-Vomawo, who has been facing trial over alleged coup-related comments, has since reacted, claiming the legal ordeal disrupted his doctoral studies abroad. WDL's Nadi Dite in Accra report.
Oliver Baka-Vomawo was arrested on February 2022 upon his return from the UK under the Akufo-Addo administration following a social media post in which he allegedly threatened to stage a coup if the controversial e-levy was passed. Prosecutors argued that his statement indicated a clear intent to subvert the constitution. He was subsequently arraigned at the Ashaiman District Court and later committed to trial at the High Court. However, despite multiple court appearances, the case never officially commenced. In a legal turn of events, the current Attorney General, Dr. Dominic Ayine, under the Mahama administration, has opted to discontinue the case. Legal experts note that a nolle prosequi does not amount to acquittal, but effectively ends the trial unless fresh charges are filed in the future. Reacting to the development, Oliver Baka-Vomawo described the charges as an attempt to derail his academic progress. He sarcastically acknowledged the efforts of the previous administration, particularly former Attorney General Godfrey Wadr, stating that they had succeeded in disrupting his doctoral program. He further called for the release of his passport and the removal of his name from the no-fly list, adding that the situation had led to the loss of his Cambridge University funding and that steps must be taken to enable him to complete his studies. The Attorney General's office is expected to formally notify the High Court on Tuesday, March 18, 2025, after which Baka-Vomawo will be discharged. It remains to be seen whether he will pursue further legal action following his ordeal. For WDR, Nadi Dite, Accra.
Still in Ghana, the Minister of Health, Kwabena Minta Kondo, has indicated plans to strengthen regulations on transit goods following the latest opioid seizure at the Tema port. On Monday, March 17, Ghanaian authorities intercepted a shipment of opioids valued at 20 million Ghana cedi, approximately $1.3 million. The consignment, which contained potent painkillers and other controlled substances, was reportedly en route to Niger. The operation was led by the Customs Division of the Ghana Revenue Authority in collaboration with other security agencies. Now, this development follows a recent investigation which revealed how Avio Pharmaceuticals, through Westfield International, allegedly exported unapproved drugs containing tapentadol and carisoprodol to Ghana, Nigeria, and Cote d'Ivoire. Addressing journalists after the interception, Health Minister Kwabena Minta-Akodo emphasized the government's commitment to tightening oversight on transit goods to prevent Ghana from being used as a conduit for illicit pharmaceutical trade.
Per our rules and regulations, per our laws, there are only two areas, designated areas, for the imports and export of medication or drugs, if you like. Tema Port and the Kotoka International Airport. Drugs are not imported through our land borders, and therefore I encourage all the stakeholders, all our security agencies, to confiscate any drugs, even if it is paracetamol, and it's going through our land borders. And the president has also committed that he is going to provide all the logistics it takes for us to effectively fight the influx of opioids in this country. So the law is clear. We are not going to reinvent the wheel. In fact, we are also looking at tightening our regulation regarding transit goods, because usually they hide behind transit goods. This is believed to be going to Niger. And last night, I was in talks with the minister responsible for foreign affairs. We are contacting the Niger government to know whether or not they have okayed such a consignment.
Ghana's Health Minister Kwabena Minta-Akodo speaking there. Now, in the move to restore public confidence and strengthen national security, the Armed Forces of Liberia is to initiate Operation True Guardian by the end of March 2025. This operation will commence in the western region counties, targeting Grand Cape Mount, Bomi, and Gbogbo. Liberia is facing escalating security issues underscored by a notable increase in transnational and maritime crimes, as well as the illicit drug trade and smuggling operations. Major El Dorado Nyanti Jebo, acting Chief of Public Affairs of the Armed Forces of Liberia, said the trafficking of arms, drugs, and humans is posing serious risk to national security.
By the end of this month, March, AFA troops will be carrying on a nationwide patrol, beginning with some counties in the west, specifically Bomi, Cape Mount, and Babolo. Liberia is currently facing significant security challenges marked by increased transnational and maritime crimes, illicit drug trade, and smuggling. Reports from local law enforcement and intelligence sources indicate a surge in cross-border smuggling activities along Liberia's border with its neighbors. This illegal crossing facilitates the trafficking of arms, drugs, and humans, thus posing a serious threat to national security and public safety. The porous nature of these borders, coupled with limited enforcement capabilities, has emboldened criminal groupings, leading to fear and tension in bordering communities. Additionally, the coastal waters of Liberia have witnessed a rise in maritime crimes, including illegal fishing and piracy. Local anglers have reported their encounters with illegal fishing vessels, which not only threatens their livelihood, but also depletes the marine resources of Liberia.
Major El Dorado Nyati Jobe is acting Chief of Public Affairs of the Armed Forces of Liberia. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM Dakar, and online on wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Niger officially leaves International Organization of La Francophonie, OIF. Independent Electoral Commission of Cote d'Ivoire commences display of provisional electoral list. Ghana considers tightening regulations around transit goods following latest opioid bust. And still ahead in Nigeria's Maiduguri, is it a case of silence or survival for women threatened with sexual violence in IDP camps? We'll be throwing more light on our guest interview. Also, we have the press review and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news. all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Oh, don't forget you can listen to us live on wadr.org and follow live stream on YouTube and Facebook. Now let's head to Nigeria, where the Al-Miskin IDP camp in Borno State is meant to be a place of refuge for those displaced by the Boko Haram insurgency. But for many women and young girls living there, it has become a place of fear and silence. Now, while officials claim the camp is safe, victims and their families tell a different story, one of suffering, exploitation, and neglect. Our correspondent, Usman Amaro, visited the camp and filed in this report.
For over a decade, thousands of displaced persons have called Al-Miskin IDP camp home. It is a place of refuge, but also a place of suffering. Among the most vulnerable are women and girls, many of whom are at risk of sexual violence. Yet, when asked about reports of molestation and rape in the camp head, Bulama Burum, is categorical in his denial.
No. Inside this camp, nothing like that. There's no report like that. In fact, it's been more than 3 years now that we have even put some youth to be monitoring reports like that. And we haven't had anything because as the leaders of this camp, we can never allow such a thing to happen in this camp. And up to now, we haven't had any of the reports, except maybe when they go out of the camp, but not inside this camp. Nobody can do that while we are here. It doesn't happen inside this camp.
But for Aisha Usman, the camp's woman leader, this statement is far from the truth. Holding back tears, she narrates her own daughter's ordeal.
The
Bulama, the village leader, earlier claimed there is no molestation of women in this camp. But I can tell you categorically that this is a lie. Just because it hasn't happened to him or his family doesn't mean it's not happening. It's happening. Girls are being molested and raped here. In fact, my 16-year-old daughter was raped in this camp and became pregnant. If you see her now, you wouldn't believe she's the one carrying a child because she was so young when it happened. This happened here. And it's not just my daughter. Other girls in this camp are going through the same thing. For him to say it doesn't happen here is completely false.
Humanitarian organizations have long warned about the risks faced by displaced women, particularly in camps where resources are scarce. With many forced to beg or rely on strangers for survival, the vulnerability is heightened. For now, the truth about sexual violence in Al-Miskin IDP camp in Borno State remains trapped between official denial and the painful testimonies of victims. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Maiduguri, capital of Borno State, northeastern Nigeria.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Oh, let's join Abraham Parker in Monrovia for the newspaper review.
On today's edition of Press Review from Liberia, let's look at headlines making the front page Africa newspaper. This is a serious issue. Foreign Affairs Minister acknowledges security concerns over Liberian passports amid potential U.S. travel restrictions. Deputy House Speaker Thomas Fala accused of misbehaving financially. To the back page of the front page Africa newspaper, President Bouaka, unaware of UA revoking Commerce Inspector General Dor Cooper's degree, says Presidential Press Secretary. And LRA, that's the Liberia Revenue Authority, to roll out amended tax laws April 1 to boost revenue growth, ease tax payment. And we'll move quickly to the Daily Observer newspaper, beginning with this development. Civil Service Agency imposes 10% salary deduction on HR directors. Government brings in experts to boost asset recovery efforts. Indeed, the forensic experts are expected in country today. National Public Health Institute of Liberia and Ministry of Health strengthen collaboration to boost Liberia's healthcare system. ELWA Hospital accused of medical negligence as Liberian woman fights for her life. And to the back page of the Daily Observer newspaper, President Bouaka unlocks the solution to Liberia's energy crisis. The rest of the stories on the Daily Observer newspaper are all commercials. Let's move to the Women Voices, which is our last stop. Press Union of Liberia to launch a policy on media accreditation and accountability. Government seeks clarity from the U.S. over reports of potential visa restrictions. Assistant Commerce Minister for Administration resigns. And so I'm dismissed with a cause. Suspended NAFA Director General Glasgow questions as President Bouaka appoints Acting Director General. Well, that does it for today's edition of Press Review for Liberia, and it's back to you. Thanks for listening.
Indeed, many thanks, Abraham Parker, there with a newspaper review.
Politics,
Analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Now let's take you back to Nigeria, specifically in Maiduguri, Borno State capital, where there have been allegations of sexual violence or abuse of women and young girls in the Al-Miskin IDP camp. Now the IDP camp, which is meant to be a place of refuge for those displaced by the Boko Haram insurgency, but for many women and girls living there, it has become a place of fear and silence. Usman Omar, who is currently in Maiduguri, has been speaking with these women who say they have been threatened if they voiced out. Well, we spoke with Usman earlier on.
The camp itself, which is an IDP camp named Al-Miskin, has been in existence for over 11 years. According to camp officials' records. And recall the recent flooding that happened in Maiduguri also displaced the occupants of the camp for some time. And of course, a lot of them, according to the camp officials, had to sleep on the streets and wherever else they could find shelter. And so this made their already deplorable situation even more vulnerable. And particularly, as you would expect, women and young girls were at the receiving end of all of these difficulties. Now, the camp itself, as we speak, is undergoing a very, very serious situation of hunger, a very, very serious situation of lack of access to basic amenities that will make life even a little bit easier. They complain of hunger, they complain of lack of care from either government or even the usual non-governmental organizations that used to come around. Yeah. Recall also that USAID has been essentially part of those organizations that have been providing support for such places. Now, with the cutting of funding of USAID, they are also feeling the brunt. So the entire situation is exacerbated. Now, of course, when situations like this happen, vulnerabilities are exposed.
Let me just quickly chip in here because of our time. Were you able to speak with any of the officials to know what the government is actually doing to ameliorate the sufferings of those people in the IDP camp?
Yes, I will say yes, because not on this visit, but on my previous visit that I had the opportunity of speaking with the Deputy Governor of Borno State in the person of Dr. Usman Kadafur. He confirmed to me that efforts are on by the state government to ensure that all IDP camps within the state are closed and people are returned back to their homes. But of course, it's a gradual process. So I want to believe that the Al-Miskin camp is one of the last, the Al-Miskin camp and another one called Mura camp. They are the only two existing camps right now in Borno State, and efforts, they are unofficial at the moment, meaning that the government is not directly responsible for their upkeep. So you can now see the disconnect. The government says that they have already made all efforts to ensure that majority of the people that have been displaced have been returned and resettled into their community. So this Al-Miskin camp is one of the unofficial, quote-unquote, camps that are left.
In 30 seconds, what is the state of security there in Maiduguri where you are?
Well, calm has largely returned to the city, especially the metropole. But of course, you still have pockets of the usual crime here and there. But largely, the city of Maiduguri is bouncing back to life. And that is also a sign that gradually the people are gaining back their life. But of course, this does not mean that it is yet uhuru for everybody, particularly those who are still residents in the two unofficial IDP camps. They are still vulnerable. They are still crying out for help.
That's our Nigeria chief, Usman Mara, who is currently in Maiduguri, Borno State. And in sport news, Sankle Janko is here in the studio. Sankle, welcome, and what's buzzing in sports?
Well, thank you for having me, Emo. Let's go straight to the point. And hello there, and thank you for joining us. Nigeria sealed their qualification into the third round of the 2025 FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup with a 2-0 victory over South Africa, bringing the aggregate score to 5-1. With the victory, the Flamingos continue their quest to qualify for the finals of the 2025 FIFA Under-17 Women's World Cup. Meanwhile, Guinea advanced to the next round after defeating Sierra Leone 2-1 in the second leg of the second round. With an aggregate score of 4-3, the Guineans will qualify for the final stage of the qualifiers. And in the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers, Senegal will take on Sudan for a crucial showdown in the battle for the top spot on Friday evening. The Teranga Lions are unbeaten but trail Sudan by 2 points. Their head-to-head clash could decide the group's outcome. The Super Eagles, meanwhile, of Nigeria must win at Rwanda to revive their hopes before a home clash against Zimbabwe. With three teams, Rwanda, South Africa and Benin, all tied on 7 points, Nigeria are in serious danger of missing out on the qualification, sitting fifth with just 3 points after 4 matches. And the reigning African champions Côte d'Ivoire have maintained their dominance in World Cup qualification, sitting top of Group F with 10 points ahead of Gabon game. The Ivorians will hope to extend their lead when they take on Burundi on Friday. Back to you, Emo.
And I hope the Super Eagles will top their group. I am so looking forward to it.
They need to do well, or else it may be too little too late for the Super Eagles.
Indeed. Thank you, Sankle, for the sport news there. And that's it on this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to our technical team for the support. Well, do connect with us on all of our social media platforms, X formerly Twitter, Instagram, at WDR News, and Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7